BBC Radio Scotland.
You're listening to Newsdrive with Vary Stewart. Now let's get more on the anti-government protests in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong International Airport cancelled dozens of flights today after thousands of protesters took part in a sit-in at the terminal. The airport's one of the busiest in the world. Many of those protesting are critical of the actions of police, who on Sunday were filmed firing tear gas and non-lethal ammunition at close range. The BBC's Kerry Allen has been following events.
The airport has suspended flights in and out, and there's been the case now for a number of weeks that people have been sitting in the airport. So when people arrive from international countries or even from the mainland, they can just see this huge sit-in, and they can't avoid the idea that people are protesting in Hong Kong. And the images are so striking. They're pictures of people all dressed in black to avoid being picked out of crowds and identified later, because people can face up to 10 years imprisonment for participating in these demonstrations. So lots of people all dressed in black just sitting in, but this weekend they were extremely violent. There's lots of very graphic footage that's been appearing online, and the government's been putting out stern criticism again, saying that this is an airport and that people, there shouldn't be this violence that in a place like this that's meant to be really maximum security, a very safe place.
And could this response then from the Chinese authorities pave the way for intervention?
It could. They've been increasingly putting out a lot of suggestions that they're raring to go, basically. Only 2 weeks ago, it was the Communist Party's People's Liberation Army's anniversary. So there was lots of stuff supporting the local military in mainland China. But they can't actually actively go in unless it's an actual crisis, literally to people's lives. They have an agreement with the Hong Kong government that what's known as the one-party, two systems policy, which is that China sits back and lets Hong Kong get on with things. And even though it's part of China as a region, Hong Kong has its own government, it has its own parliament. The government in mainland China has said that it will step back. The authorities haven't wanted to go in. But we've seen a change in the language that's being used. So previously, these protests, the images that people were seeing, they got the impression that they were small scale and they were called hooligans. But the language I'm seeing today is really striking. It's gone from hooligans to a mob to even, the main broadcaster this evening, which is the equivalent of China's Newsnight, a program called Xinwen Lianbo, has been saying that this has colours of terrorism. So people in mainland China are very frightened. They get the impression that what's happening in Hong Kong is out of control, and they're calling for the military to go in.
And what is it the protesters are actually calling for now? Because this all started as part of an extradition law which has gone away.
It did, yes. So the thing is, the extradition bill has been suspended, and when Hong Kong elects its new government, all of these rules can just get thrown out, basically. So people really don't have the view that Hong Kong is being sincere in saying that this scrapped extradition bill, which means that if somebody got arrested, they could actually be brought over to mainland China. They don't think it's really scrapped. So even though Carrie Lam, the leader of Hong Kong, has said that the bill is dead, there's a bigger call for Hong Kong autonomy and for the government to actually put something in paper which says that it's not going to agree to this, because people still are of the view that the government is still to some extent kowtowing to the Beijing government and just saying what it wants to kind of try and get people off the streets for the time being, rather than doing something that would actually be a big embarrassment to Beijing, that literally doing a U-turn on a big legislation that China did have a lot of support for.
And some of the activists we've been seeing have been wearing eye patches. This is in support of a woman who was injured. There's
been some very visual ways in which people have been dressing. So black, so that they can't be recognised, everybody wearing black. There's also been this striking image of yellow umbrellas. The umbrella has been a sign of resistance for a long time now. Even going back to 2014 in Hong Kong, when there were protests against how people in Hong Kong would vote for their leader. There were changes to legislation then which led to huge protests. But there's lots of ways in which people are communicating by the way they dress to help each other so that they avoid getting sent to prison, and also little hand signals. So people have been sharing online pictures of signals they can give to each other if they're not safe in a crowd. So if they want water, for example, they can give these little hand gestures. So social media has been really influential in helping people understand ways that they can dress, and they've been getting a lot of support, but also ways that they can reach out for help without immediately alerting Beijing.
That's our reporter Kerry Allen.